Okay, welcome everyone to DBT Office Hours. We had a few weeks off, even though I publicly wrote that we were going to keep these up every week. We had a pretty busy week last week, running our first fully remote DBT Learn. And we just had, as I was just saying, we just had that open to people who had registered for previous Learns. And it went pretty well. It was a little daunting thinking about how to teach for 2 days straight on Zoom, but we did it. And I think some of our students, we got some really good feedback from our students. So keep an eye out for more announcements around more DBT Learns if anyone's hanging out for those. Other things going on in my world are just documentation rewrites, the perfect task to be doing during this period where you get long uninterrupted blocks of time. So building out a really strong reference section for the DBT docs, which we've kind of been missing before. We also have been working on our remote events lineup. So if anyone I'm assuming most people are in the DBT Office Hours channel. We're trying to be much better about organizing these a little bit ahead of time, adding descriptions, creating events, and giving people a way to just add themselves to the calendar invite so that you get the right notifications popping up. So keep an eye on that channel. And if you have something that you want to hear about at an office hours or something that you want to talk about at an office hours, we are trying to run these weekly. And send a message or post straight in that channel, especially if it's a topic that you'd like to hear about. We had someone a few weeks ago say they'd really like to learn about snowplow. And so next week, we have someone from snowplow joining us on office hours. We're going to run through deploying snowplow on my personal website and getting the data into, I think we'll just put into Snowflake and then transforming it in DBT. So try and do all of that in one office hours and then open it up for people to ask questions as well. We've got a few other ones lined up, so check out the details there. For anyone who hasn't joined office hours before, they're pretty informal. This one especially, I think, will hopefully be pretty fun. So if you want to speak, feel free to drop it in the chat, or you can also just unmute yourselves. We allow that as well. And the theme of today's office hours is sort of workflow tips. So anything that you've done to speed up your own workflow that you think is really cool, we'd love for you to share. I've got a few lined up, so I'm going to, at some point, share my screen, show one of them, and then sort of pass the baton on. But the reason that we're having this office hours is because I was actually inspired by some of Bastian from Trip Action's recent work in sort of making his own development process better. So we're going to give him the floor first to talk about some of the things that he's been working on. So Bastian, please introduce yourself. Let us know the city you're in, the room of the house that you're in. And yeah, we'd love to hear about what you've been working on.
All right. Well, thanks for having me here. It's fun. It's the first time. And usually I can't make those because they happen on Thursday when we have our company all hands or something like that. But yeah, I currently live in Amsterdam, and I'm calling from Amsterdam. And funnily enough, it's boring. I'm just in a sort of recently converted extra room into an office, so nothing really exciting in terms of location in the house. And yeah, I work for Trip Actions, which is a B2B travel platform solution. And it's based in Palo Alto, but also has offices in Amsterdam for EMEA. And yeah, so today I guess I'll just go over a little package that I made a while ago, and then I kind of didn't really do much for it. But then some people pointed me to really cool documentation on how to make it land into the marketplace. Now it's the time for me to share it because it's easy to install and use. So I thought I'd walk you through a few of the things it does. It's not much, but on a daily basis, it helps a lot. I will share a window of text editor. All right, so the idea essentially was, I mean, I didn't come up with this. Actually, Claire inspired me with her snippets package, um, which was made for, I guess, Adam. And the idea of snippets is actually, it doesn't have to be just for DBT or any specific thing. It's, if you haven't, the first time I heard Claire talk about it, I had never heard about it. So, and then I realized, how the hell did I sort of code without this? But the idea is essentially, generally most text editors have a way for you to write sort of little templates and of text or code that you might write over and over again. And it allows you to kind of like do tab completion very quickly. And so there are a few things that you end up writing a lot if you do Jinja or DBT, or and both at the same time. And I kind of put those most common ones into a little package. So I'm gonna open, and I'm gonna have to make this big because my screen is pretty high res, so it'll be hard to see. But is the size of this terminal window looking good for people? Okay, cool. Maybe maybe that means the text later will be good. So I'm just gonna start from scratch, basically opening a new text file. And the first thing I am going to do is that's a dependency on the package, actually, that will come when it's installed. It allows you to basically have support for Jinja and SQL mixed together. And the fun thing that it does is, for example, if you are writing, say, I don't know, let's say, click star from foo, not do, but yeah. And if you were to like say toggle the comment kind of shortcut on your keyboard, it would actually drop you like a proper Jinja comment rather than a SQL comment. So it basically knows that this is a Jinja flavored piece of SQL. And that's using a package that's called Better Jinja, which is really, really cool. So let's, oops, I'm getting crazy with my keys. So I'll show a few things that I packaged in there that are kind of cool. So it'll be like two parts, some stuff that's more Jinja, and then some of the snippets that are more related to some of the things that you do in DBT. So for example, it's not uncommon that you might write, for example, sets, or like set a variable to something like that. And then if I do this and I start writing set, I have already a pre-formatted piece of Jinja. So I can say foo equal bar, and then there we go. I have something that's pretty nice, and I don't have to go and hit those curly brackets and those percent signs and everything. When you have a reduced number of keys keyboard like I do, that comes in pretty handy. So there is a lot of snippets in there, but so the set is one that I use a lot because I will end up setting a lot of variables. And let's imagine I'm going to make this like a list, because then later on maybe we want to do something cool with it. I never know which ones you put, but that should be okay. So another one that I like to use a lot is, for example, I might want to populate something based on that variable that's a list, and I might want to sort of write a for loop, for example. One of the things that I can do is start typing for, and then there is this little snippet that comes in, and it shows you what it's made of, and it also shows you how it's called. And then so if you hit enter, you can say, yeah, I don't know, I in foo, and then you can sort of say maybe you'd like to write a variable. It doesn't actually do the completion when you're inside. So let's imagine we'd have like here, and then maybe actually, is that correct? You have to put the bracket. No, when you're in. Does that work? Yeah. Something
Yeah,
like that.
you want the double
So
curlies there.
right. Yeah, I sort of for a minute I wasn't sure whether that was legal. So that way you don't have to write all of this kind of stuff. There's if, which we end up writing quite a bit. So if I don't know, who equal var, then you can write whatever, some stuff here. And then I debated making one for else in the middle, but currently that's not in there, but it's fairly extensible. Another one that I quite like is we end up writing a lot of macros, and they can be pretty, you have to type a lot of other things. So for example, if you have macro, I always forget to end the macro, so that's really nice. So here you have my macro, and then you can put your arguments here. I'm going to leave this here and then do some stuff and then exit out. So these are sort of like more like Jinja-esque kind of snippets. There are a bunch of cool ones for DBT. You end up sometimes writing over and over the config bit, but I'm pretty lazy. So I have a few pre-made config ones, so a sort of normal config, and it'll let me kind of choose the materialization. So for example, table is good here. But if I wanted to say, write incremental type of materialization, I can write config, and then I have the choice of incremental. And actually, there is a bug here, which I have to fix quickly. But no, it's not, because incremental should be there. It's not a bug. Essentially, you'd have your unique key, say, I don't know, like user video ID or something like that, and then there you'd be good. This one I love a lot because it saves tons of typing. And then you have your sort of usual. Yeah, one of the things I quite like sometimes is that I like to send stuff to like log, and there is also a like log function which will allow you to log something to standard out, and then you can say whether it's true or not. That's a dbt-s, well, more in the dbt kind of a realm. And then the refs and sources also exist. So for example, if I was going to write ref, I have the option to just directly go into, let's say my model, and then there we go. And I can even put alias if I want to at the end. And it works also for source. So I'll just go there, but you can write source, and then you'd have the source. And then the table. I'm not very crazily inspired with names today. I've had a long day. So that's one of the things. And also another thing that I find myself writing a lot is the incremental block, the sort of like if this model is incremental. And I've made a bunch of mistakes over and over again. So for example, let's put it somewhere where it probably belongs a bit more, but there is this is incremental bit of thing, and then you could have like your it's essentially, it's here would be like and then let's imagine we have a date column and it's already kind of written, and then you can even have I think I need to put actually a stop here because it's not working. It's good actually to download it. So incremental block. So yeah, essentially, that's kind of what this is. It writes a lot of these um, uh, a lot of these snippets that are pretty handy. There is a longer list, and I'll post maybe the link in the chat or in the channel to like all of the snippets that are implemented in the code. Um, One of the cool things I thought I'd share this too is you can actually go ahead and like make your own snippets as you want. And they can be like in VS Code, they can be like workspace based or for your entire editor. I think I have to like, so one of the ways you can actually do this is if you hit like Command Shift P, I think there is something for snippets. Yeah, you can configure the the user snippets, and then you can choose for which type of file it is. So let's imagine I have a pretty specific thing that I want to write in the sort of Jinja.SQL, Jinja type of SQL, and then essentially it'll open something that is already placed where it should be placed, which is great. And then I have to kind of write something, and then I will share the other window, which is a link to a really awesome snippet generator, because the syntax is a bit annoying sometimes to write. So you could say, you can sort of like type the stuff you'd want. So for example, I don't know what I wanted to make, but for example, this would be like, I'm just going to write the set sort of snippet. And here I would say, I would sort of write maybe set, and then I would do this, which is essentially like the variable. And then the thing I'm going to put in that variable, and then essentially, so you essentially have like, the one is for like the first tab stop, and then two is the second tab stop, et cetera, et cetera. And you can call like the stuff that you want. Like you can just give it nice names, and at the end of it, you have a VS Code ready thing that you can paste. I'm actually going to call it, so we can see if it actually works. You can copy that and sort of put this somewhere. And I think I have to like wrap this into some extra.
Oh, you may need to switch the screen share.
Oh, yep, that's a good idea. Thank you. Right, so I pasted this like into the JSON file that was pre-opened earlier, and if all went well, what did I call it? Yeah, new snippet. Yeah, it's there. So there we go. So it's easy to actually make them on the fly for that, are if you have stuff that's more specific for your use case, like let's say a piece of business logic or a very specific macro that you might. So there is, for example, we've been using a macro to generate a surrogate, which I know there is one in dbt utils, but we had started adopting this other one a while ago. And then, and for example, I don't like to type that macro forever. And I just have a very specific, you know, like my project at Trip Actions kind of repository of snippets, so that this doesn't have to go into this package essentially. Yeah, and the extension is like available on the marketplace. I'm going to share again. This actually is, this juggling is interesting. It's on the, well, you can actually find it, yeah, on the VS Code marketplace, and you can install it. And it'll come with all of the fun stuff and the bugs that are currently in there. And there is, so, and it, yeah, basically has like a dependency already specified for this package that I mentioned earlier, which is called Better Jinja, which does the proper syntax highlighting and kind of understanding how the Jinja SQL file looks like. And it used to be a bit annoying to install, but now as that it's a package, it's super easy. So yeah, I think that sort of was the tour of it.
Yeah, that's amazing. So if you're using VS Code, there's now snippets available. If you're using Atom, as many of us on our team are, we've had snippets, the Atom DBT package for a while. Andrew from my team is on the call, and he was delighted with, he's a VS Code user from a previous role. So he was really happy when he found out that there was a VS Code package, and even better that it's now like a first-class citizen on the marketplace. If someone does find a bug, is the code, I'm assuming the code's public and you'll accept PRs on it?
Totally, that was my, so because I showed how to generate them, now, yeah, people should definitely put PRs or issues or whatever on it. It's, I can also post this later. It's on my public GitHub, and yeah, I'll accept PRs and I'll merge them and update it to the, it's super easy actually to.
And Bastian's very quick to respond to issues, because I've subscribed to all of them, so very impressive. Yeah, okay, amazing, thank you. So tip number 1, use snippets if you aren't yet, and well, that's part A, and part B is use someone else's snippets, even better. Yeah, just level up a bit more quickly.
I have to say, yeah, most of these snippets I stole from your package, so the credits go actually to you. Really, it was just putting things where they needed to be.
I tried to port it over to VS Code and I got myself in tangles, so I'm glad someone else did. Right. And we have snippet support planned for those who use the IDE as well. I should say that. It's not there yet, though I did recently find out that keyboard shortcuts for VS Code work in the IDE. I didn't know that because I only know my brain is mapped to Atom shortcuts, so I wasn't aware of that. Cool. Well, thank you so much, Bastian, for sharing that, and thank you for putting all the hard work into open sourcing that as well.
No, thank you. It's my pleasure. It's fun.
Yeah, cool. I saw Pedro in the chat say that he was happy to share some of the workflow tips he has around sharing compiled files. Pedro, do you want to share your screen and show us how you've made your VS Code even better?
Sure. Yeah, it's a couple of extensions that I started using. One of them is called Find Related Files. Find related. So this is what it looks like, and I'll be glad to send the links later. And basically, what this one does is it allows you to well, the way that I'm using it is if I'm editing a model, I can hit a command and say show related files, and then it will search for that file name in the target directory. So then I can switch to the compiled and the run version of it. The way you set it up, you have to create some regular expressions. I had some trouble going back from the compile back to the model, so I gotta work on that. But essentially, what I did is, if you're in a model, it will capture the model name, and then it will insert it in like a search expression under the target directory. So that's one. I find that useful to switch back and forth. Well, I should say not back and forth, but one direction so far. The other one I wanted to mention is there's one that it's called Open File, or File Open maybe. Open File. So this one I use when you have your cursor on a particular piece of text. If you hit, in my case, Alt P, well, maybe this one, let's see. So if I do Alt P, and then it will search for that text, and then it will, if you only have one thing that matches it, it opens that file. If you have multiple, then it gives you the choice. So I use it to jump back from one model to another one that may be referenced in the same file. So it helps me navigate the code pretty quickly. So I can just Alt P then, and then it opens that other file.
That's really cool.
So those were the the two ones, and this one I don't remember. I don't think I did any configuration. I also did the what Claire that you have for Atom. Basically, you associate the SQL files with that Jinja SQL that Stan was talking about. Same thing for YAML files. And then you can associate the target files with nothing so that you don't get syntax highlighting in the compiled code. So you don't change that accidentally. So I did the same thing that you did for Atom in VS Code. And I had ported some of the snippets, but I didn't know how to make them into an extension. So I'm happy that Steve did that, and we can compare notes and see if there's anything new that I can add there.
Amazing.
That's it. What I had to cover.
Yeah.
Sandra, there's one more quote. Sorry, Claire, I just wanted to jump in. If you go back to any of your files, I see that there's like git blames, like dynamically loading. Do you know what package that would be?
Oh,
Yeah.
like this. Yeah, that was I think it's that git lens.
Yeah.
Yeah, I use it. It's git lens for sure, I think.
Yeah, this
Or
one
maybe,
here.
yeah.
Lens.
Oh, that's cool. That's very helpful. Sweet. Thank you.
Super nice.
No, good, great catch, Andrew. Cool. Yeah, thanks for sharing your screen, giving us a tour. I'm
Sure.
seeing a lot of dark UIs as well, which proves to me that, I don't know, it's the better one, more popular one. So yeah, if anyone else has any tips to share, just quickly let us know in the chat. I'm going to share one very quickly. So a lot of these are like more CLI ones rather than DBT Cloud. But that's okay. For those of you who aren't aware of the logs file, it lives here and it's very long and has a lot of things in it. And sometimes you hit an error and you just want to go and find the thing that broke in the logs, and there's like just a lot in there to search through. I'm up to 8,000 lines, and if you Command F for a particular error or something, you might end up getting a lot of. I've got 200 results in here. So I have a bash function called cycle logs. It takes the file logs.dbt.log and then suffixes it with, well, I should say appends the current timestamp. So you can see that just got renamed. So the next time I dbt run, which model did I actually intentionally break? Dim customers. By the way, if you don't know, you can just do -m instead of -- models to select one model at a time. So even like we're making things slowly even better for people who like writing fewer letters. Yeah, so as this is running, this is going straight into a new log file, so when things do break, and especially if you're like working with macros on top of macros, or like an incremental model where you actually need to like really just read the logs to figure out what's happening, just having that very quick shortcut to clear out the old logs so that the next time you run, you've got a fresh file, I found really useful. I think the code for this, bash rc, hopefully there's nothing wrong, nothing bad in here. Yeah, so that's the function there. I'll drop that in the chat as well. Just a little bit of bash coding, which is not my forte, but enough that I can get it to do the thing that I want it to do. Oh, and I should have said, I'm Claire, I work at Fish Analytics. I'm in Philadelphia. In this half is my study, the other half of the room is my bedroom. So multi-use room. Cool. Anyone else want to share? I did potentially ask Andrew on here because I think he might have a few.
I was gonna say, I saw someone send a chat message, but it was Pedro sending all of his links. So no new volunteer. But I do have something quick to share, and part of me feels like you might all already know it, and if not, it might change your life or might be completely boring. Can go very different ways. But I will share my screen, and I hope I share the right Chrome screen because it's always a maze. Sweet, I think this is it. This is like my demo project. Nothing meaningful in it. I actually don't know why this is private, but one thing I really love and things that have saved my life many times working in DBT projects is making sure everything that I add is completely tested, checked, and everything. And all of this can like drive you crazy every now and then because there's just a couple of things you have to keep in mind. But if you have not seen it, we actually released publicly a pull request template that makes it super, super easy to keep track of everything. This looks like a giant wall of text that you probably don't understand or would not want to like read through, but actually, thanks to GitHub's Markdown rendering, just sanitizes it into something more meaningful. And so this is more just for your benefit of like, okay, I know I need to make a more meaningful title. For description, this is what I'm expected to put in to do before merge, because sometimes, I mean, a common like workflow for us is we work a lot on like DBT and Looker, and sometimes you have to merge stuff into DBT before you merge stuff into Looker so things don't break and go crazy. And this would be like the nice place. Another common workflow might be you'd branch off of someone else's branch and you shouldn't merge it in until that person's merged it in. This would be like a nice way to link up those to-dos. Screenshots, we like screenshotting our DAGs all the time. Every time new changes come in, I can show you guys a demo of like how I use this. And a bunch of other like fun, neat stuff. My favorite is a checklist because once you've put out, and so you can see the change here was literally just, this is a new demo line. But if I create my pull request, assuming I didn't follow rules and just left it empty, at the very least, there's this checklist where I can check it off dynamically thanks to GitHub's Markdown rendering again, and kind of go through it. The cool other thing, and I'm pretty sure a lot of you guys are familiar with this too, is when you're reviewing pull requests, you do get this nice like 2 out of 6 completed. A nice little low touch way to tell your teammates that, hey, this is on its way, but probably not ready for review. Feel free to ignore it. Because you might have teammates who jump into like pull request tabs and try to resolve everything as fast as possible. And sometimes you actually just like step on each other's toes by accident. The way I've used this, and this is again just a lot of demo stuff and not anything too meaningful, but stuff like adding a new model. It's nice to just throw the DAG in, give a quick description, have all your checks in. One super, super common thing that we've used, we'd actually modify this template to have, and this is because like sometimes you might have like source data that has like a deleted at timestamp or is deleted, and you need to filter all those out. So you can actually add to the template, and I'm just going to do it here because it's quicker. I'll show you later, but you can actually add to your template like remove deleted deleted records from source data. And if you just add that to your template, 80% of the time you probably won't need it. But when you do add a new source and you get reminded of this checklist item, then it gives you like a nice like flag that, hey, you should probably think about it before merging it in. So this has saved my life a couple of times. I'll send a link as well into the DBT chat, but this is all published in what we released as like a DBT init starter project. And you can go ahead and copy paste this whole text. And it's as simple as dropping it in your .github file in your own DBT projects. So every time you hit new pull request, everything just throws in and you can forget about it and hopefully not break something as you build.
Andrew, very quickly, where are you calling from?
Oh, right. Yeah. I'm calling from Virginia. So I usually work from Philadelphia, but when we were told to work from home, my uncle went ahead and picked me up. So now I'm in their guest bedroom, and if you guys kind of notice, you can see there's a slight tilt in this room, with the drawer in the back and the doorway as well.
I
It's
just
great. It's
assumed
great.
that you're, I mean, I look like I have a tilt. That's because I'm at an angle on my.
No, this is like my screen is leveled, and the room wants me to like keep my core engaged the whole day so I don't slide and roll around.
Amazing. Yeah, we started implementing pull request templates on client projects, especially when you're working with like people who are newer to Git flows, and just providing those prompts to people, like not only useful for yourself as someone writing pull requests, but really useful as a reviewer. There's nothing worse than getting a pull request review or merge request, I should say, for the people that are using GitLab, with like no description in italics. You're just like, great. So providing those nudges to get people to actually like take the time was really like such a game changer for us. And yeah, it's just creating a markdown file really easy. Andrew linked, and Andrew showed like the DBT and Knit repo. That's really useful if you're someone who creates projects regularly, anyone on the consulting side of things. There's a lot of good stuff in there that we've just like, you know, so it's basically someone who already knows how to use DBT. It'll set up your DBT project in like the way that we Fishtown like. If someone's brand new to DBT, the normal command users are like more verbose starter project. But the pull request template is in there because we've optimized our workflow so much that we just have a command line utility to create these scaffold projects. Yeah, because I would rather spend 10 hours of my time writing terrible Python than spend 5 minutes copying and pasting files, which I hope is something that doesn't make me sound insane. But anyway. Okay, anyone else got any workflow tips that they'd like to share?
Hi, this is Hui from Vancouver, and I work for Samuels. We have been using DBT for the past year, building out our core data platform, and it's super useful. We use BigQuery for our data as our data warehouse, and we use DBT on top of that. Yeah, so I mean, well, first, thank you for all the tips, and actually I've been using DBT, the DBT Atom DBT utility since the beginning, like when you first released that, but I never actually, you remember that snip thing? I actually never know I can do a tab and then I can create that snip. So thank you, actually. Now I know I've been always have this in my, actually in my toolkit, and now I can use it. So yeah, today actually, I mean, actually I don't have, I think like you guys already talked a lot about pretty much the things that I have been doing here. So in terms of like the basic development workflow, maybe something that I want thinking to share, I don't know if maybe it's a little out of the scope, is maybe the development instead of the developing tools, and also say the development workflow, like how we actually in our team, because we have many engineers working together on the same project, and also we are moving, like when we develop the model, we need to move it into a testing environment and then eventually into a production. And then throughout all this, we need to ensure the consistencies. So we're using Dockerfile to actually, we use a Docker container. Actually, we put a DBT project inside a Docker container. And then we actually always run DBT through that Docker container. So we don't, maybe it's something that if people are interested, I can show you how we are doing it here. Okay, I'm gonna share my screen. how, okay, maybe, could you see my screen here already or not?
Yeah, we can see an atom. Oh, now we can see Vim item. Yeah.
It's an item. Yeah. Okay, so actually, I need to just open a new one. Yeah. So this is our DBT folder, and then actually what we do is we actually have a Docker file that we actually just it's this Docker file essentially build the whole including the DBT runtime as well as the whole DBT project itself. We will put them into a Docker container. So this container actually will be used for local development and also as well as for the staging and testing and production environment. So it's the same container will be used through all the environment. That's how we ensure all the dependency and everything is is like solid. And then from here you can see here the entry point is DBT. Like this is the last line. So when we run this container, it will start with DBT. And then the other thing that we did is I think it's pretty cool. Actually, is I will give all this credit to my teammate Jordan Osna. He is also in the DBT Slack, but he did all this. So it's not me. I'm just here to share. So here the DBT. So we have this script called DBT shell. So this script actually does. This script actually does two things. One is he will build, if in a local, this is how, so instead of, sorry, let me get back. Like, for example, usually we will just do DBT run, right? In the DBT folder. We in local development, we do DBT run. But actually what we do is we don't do DBT run. We actually always do DBT.shelf. We use this bash shelf, and then we do run, and then maybe the model one, things like that. So when we do this, actually what it does is this bash script actually will invoke that DBT Docker container, and he will run this model inside that Docker container. The only way we do this, actually we don't, the reason we do this is twofold. One is we just ensure all the runtime, everything across all the all other developers' computer, because like people might have different packages here and there. So when we make a Docker container, we just make sure everyone is using the same container. And also when we want to upgrade our DBT version, for example, from DBT 0.15 to 16.16, we can just change that container build file, and then everyone will have the new version, and then they only have it when they need to get to there, right? So it's that is a benefit. And so in this, let me go back to this DBT shelf script. This script, what it does is, you can see here, it actually is only used exclusively for local development, because in other development, we will use the Docker container in a different way. But the idea is we can just run DBT as usual, how we usually run it. And also what it does here is, I think there's a build command, I think here. Yeah, so first he will do a Docker build, and then he will build a local container if there's nothing, if there's any change there. And then he will do this Docker run, and then we will image our current folder into the run. So it will just works like, we are running from the local environment, but actually it's running in the Docker container. And then we find this is it's just how we are doing it here, and we find it's just a good way to ensure the environment consistency across all the developments, local development environment, as well as the staging and the production. There's some drawback, which is, of course, there's a build process, so it might take a little time, which otherwise we don't which otherwise could be saved. that would be some additional caveat. But other than that, I think we like it. Yeah, that's it.
That's pretty cool.
I was gonna say, yeah, that's super cool. At my last company before joining Fishtown, we self-hosted DBT and did the same of like running everything in Docker. It just kept us sane because like we know things don't break. And we did a lot of like side projects with Python. So there's a tendency to like upgrade something else in Python that breaks a dependency that DBT needed. And we've seen this many times where people are like, hey, DBT is not running. And then it turns out like one of their dependencies went out of sync with what DBT needed. So chucking it all in the Docker container is like super good. I think if people do self-host, that might be the best way to do it, just to make sure everything doesn't break. But alternatively, DBT Cloud does a pretty good job of isolating environments too.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, again, all the credit to my teammate Jars. So, thank you. Yeah.
No, thank you for sharing. All the credit to you for showing up today and sharing your screen. Cool. Anyone else got something that they've optimized and want to share? You think that other people could benefit from saving a few seconds every now and then? All quiet. Cool. So, well, thank you so much for everyone who participated today. And thank you also for joining us. We always just leave a little bit of time at the end. We've got about 10 minutes left, so that's good. If anyone has any questions about like anything they're working on, anything they're stuck on, any questions about events that are coming up or something like that, now is the time. We've got a few of us from Fishtown on the call to help answer.
Hi, I actually have two. So
yeah.
my name is Jeff. I'm working with Bastian at Trip Actions. And right now I'm in France, but usually I work from Amsterdam as well. So I have two questions. Number one is about the event that you mentioned at the beginning of the meeting from Snowplow to Snowflake, basically. I wonder, when is that?
That one we are doing 1 week from today.
1 week from today. Okay.
It might be a little late because we're actually the person who asked for this event is based in New Zealand. So I think it'll be like 11 p.m. London time, maybe. But we record all of these and put them up on YouTube afterwards.
Okay, that's great. Thank you for that. And so the second question would be more, so it's actually DBT specific. I know it's probably well written in the documentation, but as we have this time here, just asking. So you mentioned functionalities about logs, and I wonder, like, in which case do you use them specifically? So the reason for that is, like, I'm working quite a lot with DBT, and each time, like, the error is usually sufficient to actually debug. I wonder in which case you would need to go up to the logs to.
Yeah. I find looking at the logs really useful when I'm doing any sort of like introspective queries, or building, like, let's say I'm using one of the DBT utils macros to generate an array of, like, you know, I've got this example in my brain because I've been talking about it recently. If you wanted to make a subtotal by a different payment method, and you first wanted to query, like, okay, well, what are the different payment methods that I have? There's a macro for that. And if you weren't getting back the results that you'd expect, things get a little bit opaque when you start to use macros. So having the logs there can be really useful. And then every so often you just hit a weird edge of DBT. Something like maybe you get an error that says, like, can't create or doesn't have the right privileges to create a schema. And you're like, why are we creating a schema? Like, what's happening here? And you can jump into the logs and maybe figure out that, someone added a new, like, decided to put a model in a different schema to the other ones, and your user, like, tried to execute this exact statement and it failed. So it just gives, and the third one is probably incremental models. there's a lot that happens in incremental models and snapshots actually, which don't get surfaced, like the SQL to check which records need to be updated versus inserted is like really gnarly. And so when you get to this level and like if your results don't look right, there's just a class of problems where like you just need to really like sift through the things that are happening.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you use it in complementary to
the compiled files. Yeah.
The compiled file. Yeah. Okay. Fair.
Yeah. Cool. And I also have the like same shortcut that Pedro had to like switch between my compiled and real uncompiled files, raw files, which is a super useful one.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, great questions.
I have a question as well. I feel like it's a little bit niche, but I'm working with I'm creating some calculated fields with a currency conversion variable that is defined for the whole project.
Uh-huh.
And I want to, it's a little bit redundant now, but I'm just thinking in the future, if the fields, if the calculations are getting changed in the model, I would like the test in the YAML file to make sure that the value still fits the business logic. So right now, it's a variable that's set to the Canadian USD conversion rate. It's a fixed number. It's 1.28. So when I write the YAML test, I'm just testing that the Canadian amount divided by the USD amount equals 1.28. And it's hard coded in the test. So my question is it possible instead of me hard coding it at 128, which is the value of the project variable, if I can just call the project variable, so the test always verifies that the division between Canadian and USD amount is equal to the variable, not to the fixed number of 128. Because every time we change or if we end up changing the amount for the variable from 128 to 132, let's say, then all of these tests will fail.
Are the tests schema tests? Like, are you doing them in .yaml files or are they data tests in the tests directory?
No, they're in a YAML file.
Yeah. I'm not sure if we can access project level variables in the tests file, like in the test config. I suspect that's what you found. I'm not sure.
I tried it. It didn't work.
Okay. Yeah, I thought that might be the case because I tried it with sources the other day and it didn't work. Though we did release like some changes to like the order in which these things get resolved in 0.16.0. So I would just like first, if you're not on 0.16.0, quickly check if it does work on 0.16.0.
I am on 0.16.0.
Oh, perfect. The other thing that I would do is I think you can access variables if you write it as a data test. So a like SQL statement in the tests directory. So that's an option. The third thing that you can do though, which is like really kind of silly, is, let me see if I can do this really quickly. This is the fun time when like I try to live code and mess everything up. Atom, okay, dim customers. Okay, so let's go to, we're in project.yaml. I just cannot see my own thing. So there's CAD to USD 1.28. I don't know if this is going to work. New file. Test conversion there.sql. Never remember. Select one as result where their CAD to USD equals 1.28. No, just one equals. I've been writing too much Python lately. Let's check. DBT test. No, sorry. DBT test. No, third time lucky. Data. So what I'm trying to do is write a data test, which should return 0 rows if it passes. Does not equal. Maybe. I'm always bad at like doing not logic. Writing falsies.
Maybe different? Like the, oh.
Yeah. So
Okay.
what this basically compiled to in target compiled data test is we should actually call it something better. We call it like one as this has failed. I don't know. If the conversion rate changes, like if we change this to 130, well, actually, let's change it in the project.
Well, I can just do the calculation, right? Where,
yeah, I mean, if like you're just checking every time, like no one has changed the value in the .yaml file, I would like just check the value as close as possible. But yeah, you could also like write proper SQL statements on top of this as well. Like,
yeah, I guess I could just divide the Canadian field. It's called like billable amount. So let's say dot underscore CAD divided by billable amount underscore USD equals the variable.
Yeah. I think that'll work. Because I think it's just having trouble with the like this variable being in a YAML file. But
okay.
If you can pull it out,
yeah,
of
no,
file,
I understand. I can just okay, so I'll do a data test instead. Okay, that helps. Thank you.
Cool. No worries. That's what we're here for. Okay. Anyone else got any questions? Anyone else want to see me make a lot of mistakes in my sample projects? No. Good. Okay, well, thank you so much for everyone joining office hours. We've got snowplow coming up next week. We're talking Snowflake shares the week after, and we're talking about how to get data out of your warehouse and into like Salesforce and other tools that people in your business use a lot. How they can leverage like all the good work you've done in DBT in the tools that they use themselves the week after. Lots of varying time slots to keep it friendly for people in different time zones. But hopefully we'll see you again maybe next week or maybe in a couple weeks.
Thank you.
Oh,
Thank you.